Chapter 7. Through a Sea of Silk and Perfume. When Cato entered the great hall of the Ashen Cat Castle, most of the lords and ladies had already arrived. He did intend to take an earlier attendance, but by the time he snapped out of his stroll down memory lane, the sun had already come up. All boats had already left the docks down Crescent Bay, and his remaining chrysanthemum tea had already turned to room temperature. His nostalgic reverie wasn't the only thing to blame for his delay, however. He had the greatest trouble deciding his outfit for the largest gathering of O'Nearan nobility in nearly 6 years. It wasn't necessarily his vanity that fueled his indecision, but he would very much be lying if he said that his indecision wasn't fueled by any vanity at all. Many nobles only saw the gathering as a way to flaunt their wealth and get noticed. They would wear the most extravagant, ridiculously expensive attire, only to inflate their status. But Cato knew that whatever he chose to wear at such occasions could be perceived as a political statement if he wasn't careful enough. Such was the case with Lord Ferran when he wore the cerulean blue of O'Neara's abolished monarchy at a gathering over 40 years ago. Had he paid more attention to the political climate at the time, he would have realized how fresh and sensitive the situation still was. Because of the colour he chose, Lord Ferran was seen by some as a leftover loyalist to the old crown. He was assassinated on the way back to his mansion. Weeks later, it turned out that cerulean blue was simply the favourite colour of his infant daughter. Cato wouldn't make the same mistake that had since the unfortunate incident been called Ferran's folly. He made sure not to offend anyone with his outfit, and stood at the Belly's entrance wearing a long black robe that was made from the finest Kyoguni silk. Black was the colour he chose for his clan, an homage to his time at the academy when he was known as the Lord of Nothing. A silvery white hollow circle was sewn onto the backside of his robe, giving the appearance it was drawn in a single stroke with a thick brush. The insignia of the Night Clan depicted a solar eclipse, a cosmic event where the moon would shield the earth from sunlight. It was an ode to his past family of Moonshield. A violet sash was tied around his waist, signalling his loyalty to O'Neara's ruling family. He looked like a proper lord if he had to say so himself. Nothing too fancy, but definitely not underdressed. He waded through a sea of silk and perfume and struggled to move toward the dais where the 8 masters sat side by side at a long table.
"It would seem that time has finally caught up with you, Master,"
he thought when he established eye contact with the aging Grandmaster. The connection seemed bittersweet at first, but shortly after, only sweetness remained. Grandmaster Aemon, who was seated in the middle of the dais, sent him a greeting in the form of a warm smile. Without pause, he smiled back.
"Yeah, it's been far too long, I know."
For the past 6 years, Cato had travelled across the realm as Aemon's representative, and spent as much time in foreign lands as he did in O'Neara. After a diplomatic mission to Sperea, the capital city of Aespera, he returned home about 2 weeks ago with the intention to finally settle down for a while. However, he hadn't found the opportunity to meet with his master yet. He was too preoccupied trying to decipher the strange dreams he'd been having. Of course, he could have sought counsel, but ultimately decided not to bother the old man with something he deemed to be trivial. The dreams were a puzzle he had to solve on his own. He did make an attempt to talk about his dreams with someone else, but she waved him off as if dismissing the nonsensical babblings of a child. He turned his eyes to the far end of the table where the woman in question was seated. Aisha Celestine, the pride of O'Neara. She was born in the same year as Cato, but her accolades far exceeded that of any person their age. She was only 10 when she entered Ethelwomb as the youngest student in its long and fabled history. By the time Cato was admitted to the academy, Aisha had already graduated. At the age of 20, she succeeded Lord Cesare and became the youngest person to claim the seat of a master. Her astronomical rise to the top wasn't unwarranted, however. From birth, Aisha was destined to be a star. Back at the academy, Cato learned that all living beings were governed by an unseen force called aura. Those who were so-called blessed by Ava were capable of manipulating their aura to do extraordinary things. Most people who received the blessing had the ability to exert control over a certain element and might be able to weave a ball of fire or a gust of wind. He also learned that women were generally endowed with a bigger blessing than men, which made them capable of manipulating stronger forces for a longer period of time. Aisha Celestine, however, was blessed beyond any fairness or reason. Her auric well was supposedly bottomless. She was said to have the ability to conjure thunderstorms, tidal waves, hurricanes, earthquakes, and even meteor strikes. With a snap of her fingers, she could annihilate half a nation. Her auric prowess was so well known throughout the realm, people even called her the reincarnation of Ava.
How is it possible that a woman who is barely 5 feet tall can have control over so much power?
Cato shuddered at the thought of seeing her angered. It was only then that he noticed her gaze and wondered how long she had already been staring at him. He saw a dangerous glint in her golden eyes that told him what a fine choice he had made with his attire. The mischievous smirk on her face further outlined her intentions. He gave her a wink to acknowledge her compliment and to send one back in return.
You look astonishing as always, Ace.
She wore a short satin robe with long, wide sleeves and open shoulders. It was dyed in the colour of a wilted rose and accentuated with fine threads of gold that perfectly matched her eyes. She gently caressed her collar with a single finger and invited him to keep watching. With calculated precision, she traced the golden threads on the velvety maroon, teased a little bit with a few delicate swirls around her collarbone, and seduced his eyes to follow her finger in a mesmerizing glide down her chest. Her bronze skin revealed itself, and he was even graced with the tiniest glimpse of a cleavage, when suddenly he saw her hand turn into a fist with only her middle finger still sticking out. He burst into laughter and scratched his nose with a middle finger of his own.
What are we doing, Ace?
He thought, and allowed his mind to wander off unsupervised for a moment. Cato had a volatile relationship with Aisha. Like him, she too grew up without the love of her parents, who were among the final casualties of the Great War. But unlike Cato, she was never brought to an orphanage. Instead, she was raised by her great-aunt, Hannah Gallowworth, in the heights of the Alabaster Spire Monastery. When Aisha came of age, she became the rightful ruler of Crescent Bay, which until then had been governed by her uncle, Lord Cassius. But after having ruled the seaside town for nearly 2 decades, Lord Cassius was reluctant to simply hand over what he had built. Having just been granted the neighbouring settlement of Serenity Hills at the time, Cato saw it as a priority to pacify the situation in his backyard before it could escalate into a family feud. In the end, he was able to appease both parties by suggesting a shared rulership, though he was sure his solution would only delay the inevitable. As soon as Aisha would bear a child, talks of inheritance and rightful ownership of Crescent Bay would undoubtedly rekindle. It might very well be the case that he would one day have to deal with the problem in a more definitive manner, but whether he would have a personal stake in it or not by then, only time could tell. Cato and Aisha shared a similar suffering of loneliness throughout their pasts, and it was only natural that they would gravitate to each other's arms for solace. But despite their mutual affection, neither of them ever committed to anything more substantial than the occasional celebration of the flesh. He forced himself to snap out of his reverie before anyone got to see his diabolical grin. He sent Aisha another wink and took his eyes off her. By chance, they landed on the grey and dusty man called Cyrus Eunoia.
All salt, no pepper nowadays, huh?
He remembered how scared he was when he first met the man who was known as the Eye of Onira. He even thought he was staring at a corpse until Cyrus started talking. The master had his eyes closed as always. He sat next to the Grandmaster with a content smile on his face, as if enjoying an orchestra no one else could hear. Even among those who were blessed by Ava, Cyrus Eunoia was graced with an extraordinary gift that only one in a few thousand possessed. He was a seeker, someone with the ability to sense the flow of aura. But he wasn't just any ordinary seeker. He was the very best. His eyes were shut because he didn't need them to see. He perceived the world through the movement of aura, and with it saw much more than his eyes could ever show him. It had been said that Master Cyrus was able to sense and identify hundreds of people within a few-mile radius. He could see through buildings, forests, and mountains as if they were all made of glass. His rare gift was the reason he could always be found in the vicinity of Grandmaster Aemon. Any attempts at an assassination would be snuffed out by the seeker in advance. Cyrus frowned when he sensed that Cato was staring at him. He then smirked and slowly opened his eyes to pierce the young lord with an icy gaze. Cato immediately froze for a second. It was easy to forget that Cyrus wasn't actually blind. He snickered and turned away from the seeker. He froze again when his eyes were locked with the ruby-coloured eyes of the man that was known as the Beast of Onira, the monster of Mengarovi, or simply Mycon Bloodthorn. But, more than any names or titles, Cato knew Onira's most reputable warrior best as the father of Marcus.
The similarities are uncanny,
He thought as he shifted his eyes in search of his friend. Marcus was nearly identical to his father in every sense of the word. They both were commanders in the army of Onira. They both valued loyalty, honour and justice, almost to a fault. They both possessed the ability to shapeshift into animalistic monsters at will. The only difference was that Mycon looked a bit older, wore a goatee instead of a neatly trimmed beard, and had longer, slightly darker hair. Other than that, Cato might as well be staring at Marcus.
Without question, the Bloodthorn blood is thick.
He looked around to find his friend, but no matter where he looked, Marcus was nowhere to be seen.
It's very unlike you to be late, dumbass. Please don't tell me you got lost again.
Marcus became the commander of the 4th Division in the army of Onira shortly after graduating from Ethelwomb. He was responsible for the safety of the nation's southeastern borders, and being as dutiful as he was, rarely left his post in Mengarovi. As a result, he could never find his way around Ravennest, or any other city for that matter. Cato thought about the last time he visited Mengarovi and felt a cold shiver crawl up his spine. He had once heard, in a tavern, not in the history classes of Ethelwomb, that Mordecai, the founder of the Bloodthorn clan, came to Aden from a mystic realm in the north, where shapeshifting was considered to be no more than a mundane ability.
Ridiculous.
But what he did learn at the academy was that Mordecai eventually settled down in Gallo Woods and served the royal family of Oni-Ra as a mercenary. After years of service, the king made him the lord of Gallo Woods, and Mordecai changed the name of his new domain to Mengarovi. Supposedly, it meant heart of the wolf god in his native tongue. And now, centuries later, Mengarovi was known as a forest where the hairy demons of the Bloodthorn clan roamed free. Cato sucked his teeth and took a glass of wine from one of the servants who passed by. As much as he had travelled over the years, he had yet to come across a place where shapeshifting was even remotely considered mundane. He couldn't fathom a world where turning into monstrous killing machines would do no more than trigger a few shrugs. He knew that taller tales had been told before, especially in taverns, but that particular story always stuck with him. He would love to see a world that was filled with the wondrous unknown, but until he saw it with his own eyes, considered it to be nothing but a drunken man's tale.
And speaking of unreliable drunks,
his eyes drifted toward a man who was buggering a servant for yet another refill.
Cronus Metalung.
Even in thought, he spat out the name. He sharply scowled at the master, who had a messy set of hair,
In the colour of human feces.
and was on the verge of embarrassing himself with the way he yelled at the poor boy. Cronus Metalung, the latest addition to the Council of Masters and the Lord of Grimshire. He was one of the most celebrated heroes of the Great War, and the last orphan before Cato to have been admitted to Ethelwomb. But unlike Cato, he never graduated. Cronus left the academy when he was only 16 to help fight in the war. He was touted as a talented earthweaver, someone with the ability to manipulate minerals through aura. He was also known to be highly ambitious, and coupled with his unquenchable thirst for glory, quickly made a name for himself during the final stretch of the war. His status was elevated to one of a hero when he successfully defended his home village of Grimshire from invading Raconian troops. Only a few years after the war, the orphan called Cronus of Grimshire was elevated to Cronus Metalung, the Lord of Grimshire. Although never having graduated from Ethelwomb, he was invited to become a teacher there, and held that position until he left the academy to become a commander in the army of Onira. His 3rd Division was responsible for the nation's northwestern border which meant that Cato would fall under his command in the event of war. When Cronus was 34, just a few months before Cato graduated, he succeeded Lady Felice as one of O'Neara's 8 masters. Cato smirked as he stared at the intoxicated master who was having his 4th and 5th drink almost at the same time. It would appear that Cronus still had an unquenchable thirst, but the taste he was craving had certainly changed over the years. Cato almost felt sorry for the hero he had once looked up to. Almost.
If only you weren't such a malignant tumour, Cronus Metalung.
Again he pronounced the name in his thoughts with venom. The man who sat next to Cronus seemed to have taken notice of Cato's nasty glare. He was sipping a glass of water with a hint of amusement on his face. Cato glanced back and gave the spymaster a polite nod before he turned his eyes elsewhere. He would not want to be trapped in a stare-down with Caius Silverink of all people. The pale-skinned, raven-haired master was the leader of O'Neara's Shadow Affairs Division, a unit separate from the regular army that specialized in covert operations and interrogations. Caius was a weaver of illusions with the ability to influence minds, and known to have used morally dubious tactics in order to extract the information he needed. Cato turned his attention to the final 2 masters at the table. He saw Nia Seraphine talking to her mentor, Hana Gallowworth, and somehow received a strong feeling that they were talking about him. He was too distracted to lip-read their conversation, however. The eyes of Caius Silverink were still tightly fixed on him and demanded to be seen. Whether the decision to do so was voluntary or not, he turned his eyes to the spymaster all the same.
I'm not playing this game with you again, Master Caius. Not today,
he thought, and shook off his unease. Master Hana seemed to notice the disturbance in his mind and sent him a wry smile. He stared back into her opaque grey eyes that were halfway hidden behind a curtain of wrinkles and wasn't sure if he was supposed to smile back. He wasn't very familiar with her. Aisha had told him a bit about her great-aunt before, but nothing he didn't already know. Hana Gallowworth was the only master at the table who stood alongside Eamon Everlong when he overthrew the monarchy. She was the spiritual leader of the monastery in Alabaster Spire and lived a secluded life, high up in the permanently frozen mountains. She only left the temples on the rarest of occasions. Her presence at the gathering signified the importance of the event, and it was only the 2nd time that Cato had seen her. He felt uneasy for a moment when he thought about the implications of her attendance, but as soon as he received a warm smile from Master Nia, all worries seemed to melt away.
My goddess.
His thoughts didn't go much further than that. Nia Seraphine was the first and quite possibly only woman he ever truly worshipped. When they first met, he was only 14 and already halfway past the gates of death. His world had been turned to black when she brought back the light. He couldn't remember much from the 2 months he spent under her care, only that she had saved his life and that he had worshipped her like a goddess ever since. When he received the ownership of Serenity Hills, he even had a shrine built in honor of the fallen Seraphine clan. The belly of the cat suddenly turned silent when Mycon Bloodthorn rose from his seat. He took a moment to let the silence sink in before he spoke to the audience. His ruby-coloured eyes scanned across the hall to make sure he had grabbed the attention of every single attendant.
"Welcome, noble lords and ladies of O'Neara,"
he finally said after the silence was starting to make some people more than just a little nervous.
"Please take your seats and try to be on your best behavior. Grand Master Aemon has a few words he would like to say."
Everyone shuffled to their seats while finishing their conversations in a hurry. Cato looked around one last time to find his friend, but Marcus was nowhere to be seen.